is discussing Islamabad's faltering relations with the United States and their impact on the Afghan peace process. Mr. Khan, you said that Pakistan should fight terrorism for its own sake. Is Pakistan fighting terrorism for somebody else at the present moment?
Well, Pakistan started off fighting the U.S. war. I mean, there was no, as I said, there were no Al-Qaeda in Pakistan. There were no militant Taliban in Pakistan. We did not have the terrorism. We had sectarian terrorism, but that was just nothing compared to what happened once we joined the U.S. war on terror after 9/11. And then we had a spate of suicide bombing, which was more than in any other country. I mean, Pakistan suffered the sort of terrorism which no other country suffered. And there was a point in 2010-11 where, the people were worried about the future of our country. We were falling apart. So it was thanks to our security forces that they eventually controlled this fanaticism and terrorism, which was because we were considered collaborators with the Americans. So all the anti-Americanism turned against Pakistan. So people were attacking Pakistan's security forces because they thought we were collaborating with the U.S. So the anger against the U.S. was the brunt was borne by Pakistan.
Afghan politicians are openly saying that Pakistan is supporting the Taliban. It's become somewhat of an open secret, and even some former Pakistani officials are admitting to that, like Musharraf even. How can Pakistan be fighting terrorists with one hand and then supporting them with another?
Well, they're two different things. One are the so-called Taliban who are attacking Pakistan. Pakistani forces, security forces who are indulging in terrorism in Pakistan. On the other hand are the Afghan Taliban who are fighting in Afghanistan. Now what Pakistan says is that the terrorism coming into Pakistan is from Afghanistan, and Afghanistan is saying that the terrorism coming into Afghanistan, or that they cannot win in Afghanistan because of the insurgents, which is Afghan Taliban, going in from Pakistani borders. My point is that clearly, first of all, there's a huge part of Afghanistan, some say 40%, some say 50%, which is not in the control of the Afghan government. So why would all these Taliban have to come to Pakistan if there is so much space available for them to operate from within Afghanistan? That's number one point. Number two, given that there is not going to be peace in Afghanistan unless there is a political settlement, so should not the Afghan government and the Americans be telling Pakistan to use their influence on the Afghan Taliban to get them for peace talks? So surely Pakistan's role right now should not be killing more people and creating more problems for a country that has taken the most beating, most suffering in the war on terror. Rather, it should be helping in the dialogue and the peace process with its influence on the Afghan Taliban.
Is Pakistan actually capable of getting its multiple militant groups under control on the Afghan border and in Kashmir? International community is saying that Pakistan tolerates militants, but does Pakistan have enough strength to eradicate them if you wanted to? I mean, the Pakistani Taliban are even listing you and your family as targets. Can they be stopped?
The Pakistan Taliban their strength has been greatly reduced. Ever since the American footprint reduced in Afghanistan, the level of fanaticism went down in our country. No longer were Pakistani security forces supposed to be collaborators of the Americans. Hence, the recruitment for Pakistani Taliban went down and the fanaticism went down. And so Pakistani security forces have more or less controlled what is called the TTP, the Pakistan Taliban. Problem is in Afghanistan now. If Afghanistan is secure, settled, stable, then there would be peace in Pakistan. The problem is that because Afghanistan is unsettled, we keep having attacks from Afghanistan on the Pakistani soil right now. Because the Pakistani forces have controlled the Pakistani areas, more or less now. There are still incidents, but much fewer. Problem in Kashmir, that for the last 25 years, there are almost 600 to 700,000 Indian troops in Kashmir. There are violations of human rights. The local population has turned against the Indian army. The people have risen up against India in peaceful protests. Now, India blames Pakistan for what is going on in Kashmir. In Kashmir, it is an indigenous struggle. This is not a struggle fueled by Pakistan. Why don't they give the Kashmiris right to decide what they want, what is their democratic right to decide their future? But they do not give them that right. They're using the forces to suppress that a democratic freedom struggle, and they blame Pakistan for what is going on in Kashmir, which again is unfair. Now, so we have two fronts. One is India blaming all what is happening in Kashmir on Pakistan. The other is the US and the Afghan government blaming for the instability in Afghanistan on Pakistan. That's the problem with Pakistan right now. Unfortunately, where Pakistan has failed, we did not project our point of view internationally on the diplomatic level. We have failed to really project what is happening in Kashmir, and at the same time, the sacrifices Pakistan has given in the US war on terror, and Pakistan is not responsible for what is happening in Afghanistan.
You've said that if hundreds of thousands of NATO troops couldn't change the situation in Afghanistan, additional troops the U.S. is sending there annually is only going to prolong the agony. Do you mean to say that Afghanistan is finished as a state and should be left alone, die peacefully?
No, not at all. I think Afghanistan has a very proud history. Its people have suffered more than probably any other country, because they've been suffering almost 40 years. They've been suffering this conflict, strife, instability. And so if any people deserve peace, it's people of Afghanistan. And the only way that can be achieved is if all the neighbors sit on the table and bring the Afghan Taliban and the Afghan government on the table. That's the only way. Unfortunately, there is until very recently, the Americans were not willing to talk to the Afghan Taliban. Only now they have accepted that there should be dialogue. But this one-dimensional policy of just using military means to achieve peace, it had failed a long time back. There was a time when Obama came to power, and there was and Holbrooke was the rep in Afghanistan, and he almost got the Taliban to sit on the table for a dialogue. But unfortunately, the surge spearheaded by Patriots, that surge is what sabotaged this peace talks, and actually that led to more bloodshed. Now, Trump initially tried the same thing again, hoping that, by attacking the Taliban, he would bring them to the table, but that's failed. And now I think there is a consensus everywhere that the only way peace can be achieved in Afghanistan is through dialogue and all neighbors sitting on the table. But that's the most important thing to help the people of Afghanistan.
So, Hamid Karzai told me in a recent interview that Pakistan's policy towards his country is defined by its rivalry with India. Why is it so bad for Pakistan if Afghanistan becomes India's friend?
Well, it's because the signals coming from India are extremely aggressive. Ever since Mr. Narendra Modi's prime ministership, India has stanced towards Pakistan as not only aggressive, but the whole their foreign policy is to isolate Pakistan. And some of us in this country think that they even wouldn't mind Pakistan splitting, breaking away Balochistan from the rest of the country. So clearly, Pakistan is worried that if they face India on two fronts, meaning, long eastern border, and then if Afghanistan becomes an Indian satellite, which is the big fear with the Pakistan security forces, then Pakistan is struggling on two fronts. So it's out of this insecurity that Hamid Karzai is right. The policy is determined by security issues, yes.
So both countries, India and Pakistan, seeing how tense their relations are, have military plans for a conflict. Recently, Pakistan adopted a doctrine of using low-yield nuclear weapons in case of a major war with India. Is Islamabad really ready to use nuclear weapons on the Indian subcontinent?
That is the nightmare scenario, and that's why it's very important to resolve our differences, India and Pakistan, to sit on a table and have some sort of a roadmap to resolve their issues. Problem is, I repeat again, the Prime Minister Narendra Modi, his policy ever since he's come into power, it's extremely aggressive and it is hostile towards Pakistan, which obviously Pakistan being much smaller than India, it has made the country very insecure. The governments are insecure, our security establishment is insecure. Bearing in mind that we are two nuclear-armed countries, the best way is that we sit down and resolve our differences. But unfortunately, so far, India's response has been arrogant and very aggressive. And whatever happens, the moment any sort of talks start or have in the past, one terrorist incident then derails the whole process. We are back to square one. What we really need is a strong, determined leadership in both the countries, a leadership that has the ability to take the pressure from that small lobby in both countries which does not want peace. And come what may, whatever happens, whatever little incidents happen, the two countries stick to a roadmap of peace. And the peace has to be a resolution of the Kashmir issue. So unfortunately, at the moment, I don't see that dialogue happening. But in the future, it is the only solution that the two countries sit together and resolve this issue of Kashmir so that we can live side by side as civilized neighbors.
All right, Mr. Khan, thank you very much for this interview. Good luck with the elections. We were talking to Imran Khan, member of Pakistan's National Assembly and leader of Pakistan Movement for Justice, discussing the rift between Islamabad and Washington and its implications for the peace process in Afghanistan. That's it for this edition of Sophie & Co. I'll see you next time.